Think about the last time you paid for something. Maybe it was a quick tap, a transfer, or even a swipe. It probably felt very simple, almost invisible. But behind that moment was an entire system, one that determines how fast money moves, how much it costs, and who is included. Now imagine redesigning that entire system from the ground up. Today, we're unpacking the National Payment System Vision and Strategy 2030, a bold new roadmap that aims to transform how money moves across Namibia, making payments faster, more inclusive, and more connected than ever before. I'm Nofiku Hamunime, your host, and in this special edition of BONCAST, we sit down with Ms. Irene Venter, the Acting Director for the National Payment System and Financial Surveillance Department at the Bank of Namibia. Irene, let's start here. The Bank of Namibia, in collaboration with the Payment Association of Namibia, recently launched the NPS Vision 2030, which really has been described as a defining moment for Namibia's payment ecosystem. From your perspective, what will fundamentally change with the introduction of Vision 2030?
Thank you, Nafuku, and thank you for having me. Before I maybe provide a little more context around the Vision 2030, maybe let me provide some background to how we've gotten to 2030. So the NPS Vision 2025 is really the building block on which the Vision 2030 is being built. If you look at it more like when you build a skyscraper, you have to build the foundation.
Yeah.
In 2025, or Vision 2025 was really building that foundation. And now we can build a skyscraper. And for a skyscraper to stand, you need to have a solid foundation. And that is what NPS Vision 2025 achieved. If you look at where we were before 2025 or during 2025, we had about 9 participants in the national payments landscape. With the enabling laws and everything that we've done through the NPS Vision 25, we are now sitting with over 28 participants providing payment services.
Wow.
Meaning a more inclusive, more connected, and more interoperable environment.
Yeah. And a bigger ecosystem
And a
as
bigger
well.
ecosystem as well. Meaning a lot of oversight from our end to ensure that the landscape remains resilient and sustainable and adaptable. But if I look at Vision 2030, it really is anchored on 5 themes, which we know what they are. But in essence, what we're going to get out of that vision is a more digital payment landscape, interoperable ecosystem, inclusive, secure, and regionally connected. That is what NPS Vision 2030 aspires. And throughout the conversations, we can talk about what each one of these pillars mean.
And I mean, I'd like to actually touch on the digital aspect, because I think this has really been one of the key focuses for the payments ecosystem, and I think even at Bank of Namibia. And one of the key things we always talk about is digital public infrastructure. And I'd really like for you to unpack that a little bit more, and maybe how you see DPI, which is how we refer to it, practically reshaping the way that government, businesses, and just ordinary citizens, Namibians, interact financially in the country.
Yeah. I always like to take our, users and customers and even ourselves back to where we have started.
Yeah.
If you look at payments 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was very much paper-based, very much cash-driven, hard cash. And then we moved into where we started transacting with checks, and we have phased out checks.
Yeah.
You would not believe that there are some Western countries that are still running on check systems, and we have actually advanced. So there are certain areas within the payments landscape that we're actually leading payments innovation.
Yeah.
And through that, we introduced debit cards or cards, ATMs, and then we moved into the digital world of be able to do transactions through EFT, electronic funds transfer, and then the introduction of e-money. But if you also look at our e-money system right now, it's very much closed loop driven. I can only transact within that service provider. And then we look at things such as digital public infrastructure, which is going to be a core component of how payments is going to be initiated and flow in the next 5 years. Come 2030, I set up this vision of how payments landscape would have evolved. And I want to give practical examples of how that would look like. For instance, one of the things from digital public infrastructure is the digital KYC and ID that will be created with the Home Affairs and so forth. So it creates that you can access authentication of KYC digitally as opposed to, providing a photocopied and stamped and verified ID. So it replaces that.
So financial institutions will be
So
able
financial
to access
institutions.
that. I don't need to come with my photocopy to the bank. They'll be able to access it.
No.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the aim is, to be digital. And then secondly, we are also working on open banking and later on evolving into open data. So what does open banking mean? It's really common standard of messaging formats and that we will be speaking to each other as an industry, not only in payments, but in non-banks as well, banks, non-banks. Home Affairs is nothing to do with payments, but it plays an integral role in it. Imagine you are coming to shop for a home loan. You can go on an app and look for home loan pricing by comparing all different players, right? Right now, you have to submit your ID, your payslip, and they'll have to do a whole assessment in the background in terms of affordability. With DPI, information can be shared electronically through consent. You as the user can consent who can access what information for you for a particular purpose. And that is what DPI is. And then that verification of you in the background is then done through something like a digital KYC.
Yeah.
Maybe if I could stretch it, let me build in insurance product as an example. Say, for instance, you have a claim, a death claim or a life insurance claim. Right now, if you go to an insurance, you have to provide a death certificate for that to be authenticated and for that life insurance policy to be paid out. In future, in 5 years' time, that death certificate can be requested through digital public infrastructure to the Home Office for verification of a life insurance claim.
Wow.
Once that death certificate has been authenticated and verified, that payment of a life insurance can be seamlessly transacted. So that is in essence what we're talking about: interoperability, open banking through digital public infrastructure.
Wow, I love that example. I think it's really bringing it closer to home and really simplifying what we're talking about. And I want to actually touch on a term that you've just mentioned now, and something that we are always talking about, but maybe not a lot of people understand, and that's interoperability. So maybe if you can just, for our viewers who are watching this, explain what does interoperability mean, why is it important, and how do we achieve it?
Thank you. And for the purpose of the viewers at the end, I would like to also simplify this again. Let me use an example of e-money. I have previously touched on it. E-money is currently closed loop. When e-money was introduced some few years ago, it was introduced on a closed loop basis, meaning I can only send and receive within the service provider that I have, right?
The one service provider,
The one service provider. Meaning you don't need to bank with FNB, but if I do send it on your cell phone or any other service provider, you need to go to that provider's ATM or infrastructure to redeem it, to access it. So it remains closed loop. You can also not really spend it digitally because it's also limited. So by design, it was created on a closed loop basis. And maybe if I can use a current example of interoperability, is ATM cards and ATMs itself, or a debit card and an ATM. You can take Bank A's debit card and go to Bank B's ATM and you can withdraw cash. That is an element of interoperability. But you can't do that with e-money, for example. So that means it's a closed loop system. So with interoperability, what we are saying is we open up the rails that we speak and connect to, irrespective of the service provider that you are dealing with. Secondly, what we are also saying with interoperability is to create digital payments as opposed to you redeeming your cash from an e-money perspective, because 99% of our e-money transactions, it's redeemed at ATMs or at a cash agent. What we want to achieve with Vision 2030 is to deepen digital spending, meaning we open up the rails for QR code payments. You can send and receive money irrespective of where your bank, where your beneficiary sits, and it creates that openness within different participants and customers.
And I mean, touching on that, one of the key initiatives that Bank of Namibia and the industry is trying to implement is the instant payment solution, which will also promote interoperability. We've spoken a lot, even on this podcast, about the instant payment solution. But from your perspective as the regulator, what are the behind the scenes things that we need to get right in order for the instant payment solution to take off?
That's a very brilliant question. And instant payments will only be a success because of its adoption, one. But two, because of how we are designing it.
Yeah.
So what we need to do as an industry is to make sure that our instant payments design is customer-centric and customer-friendly. It must be easy to use, and it must be efficient to use. So design is critical. How the systems speak to one another in terms of the standards that I've mentioned earlier on must be simple and promote interoperability and steer away from closed-loop transactions. Furthermore, what instant payments really will enable is you would be able to make a payment from one wallet or service provider's wallet to another service provider. And on top of it, not only from wallet to wallet movement, but it can be from account to wallet, and wallet to account. So it is a whole cross-pollination. Look at a bee and, pollinating across all other flowers. It's sort of the same concept that we're trying to achieve, to make payments quicker, safer, efficient, and cost-effective.
And I mean, it will really revolutionize the entire payments landscape in Namibia.
Remember, if you receive now a wallet, you cannot really on-send it to another user that sits at a different service provider or a different, a bank.
Yeah.
You will have to potentially redeem it, take the cash and send it. But now with instant payments, it allows that on-send capability, irrespective of whether it's an account or a wallet.
I love that. I'm very excited for the instant payment solution. And, coming back to the vision, something that I always hear people say is that it's quite easy to design a strategy, but the execution is always where the challenges come up. So I wanted to just get a view, given that Bank of Namibia really played a key part in terms of designing the strategy. What are the big execution risks that potentially the vision and the strategy could face, and how can we potentially try to mitigate that?
Yeah. So the beauty about the NPS vision, it's actually owned by the entire payments participants in the industry. It was co-crafted by every payments participant within this ecosystem. So that already creates a sense of ownership and accountability.
Yeah.
The next steps that we have now done is we have mapped out how we're going to implement this 5-year strategy within the next 5 years. So we are taking a staggered project implementation approach where we're saying year one, this is what we'd like to achieve. And within that year, we have milestones that we aggressively track. And we have twice a year check-in points in terms of our progress, strategic progress, and update on it to keep ourselves honest. Where are the pain points? How do we mitigate these pain points? And how do we achieve full implementation of our vision by 2030? So it is, in practical terms, we are taking a strategic and a project plan approach where we have structured the vision 5 years of implementation. And in those 5 years, we have got milestones to achieve. And twice a year as an industry, we come together and we assess ourselves to say, here's where we are, here's what we need to do, here's where we need support, here's what we need to expedite, here's where we are on track. But the emphasis really is, it is a strategy and a vision that is owned by each participant.
I love that.
They have created this together with the bank.
Yeah, and I mean, what I'm hearing is that there's, first of all, broad buy-in in terms of, who's going to be delivering on this. And you also have identified targets, and you need to be reporting back on that. So I think I want to end our conversation just touching on misconceptions people might have about the strategy, but I also maybe want to say about the payment system as a whole. What are the key misconceptions maybe you've heard over the past couple of months? And, how do you want to maybe clarify that?
So one of the key misconceptions is when we talk about the NPS Vision 2030, people assume it's just moonshot implementations. No, it is a combination of it. It's a combination of what we have already built. Remember, I spoke about we've built a foundation. It's about building on that foundation, including new innovations as well. So to see through things such as the Namibia QR codes, we have last year, through the NPS Vision 25, created a QR code payment standards. Now we are executing on implementing NAMQR. So maybe I can also talk about what NAMQR is.
Yes.
So NAMQR really is, if you go to a merchant or a shop, you see a QR code right now. Again, operating on a closed loop basis. So if you don't have a particular app, or if you don't bank with a particular bank who provides that, or service provider who provides that QR code, you can't pay with a QR code. You either have to pull out cash, or you have to pull out your card and initiate your payment in that regard. But we are trying to achieve is we have created standards that allows QR code payments to be interoperable as well.
Yeah, wow.
Meaning if I come at a shop, I can just pull out my phone, scan it, or I can type the short USSD code, irrespective of who provides that QR code, to make a payment. And therefore, money also stays digital.
Yeah.
Let me maybe provide an example. One of the biggest things that we can solve for is really taxi drivers. It's a very highly cash system, because when you get into a taxi, you pay by cash. And then the taxi driver sits off this cash. They go to a fuel station.
And if you have too big a note, it's a problem. Yeah, no.
You know the hassles. So what we're trying to do is we're saying, okay, we want to standardize QR codes. So it can be interoperable. We want to promote usage and deepening digital payments. Let's standardize QR codes and make it interoperable. You sit in the taxi, there is a QR code, you scan with your phone, you make that payment. It can be either push or it can be either pull. Push means I push a payment to the taxi driver's cell phone number. The taxi driver accepts it. It says, yes, I've received your payment. Pull means the taxi driver presents you with the code, you pay it, you receive a notification, and then you accept it. So, and therefore it creates that authentication that I've actually paid for my ride, and then the taxi driver can also confirm that I've received my funds, irrespective. So what we're really trying to do is, through that, we want to create not only new innovations, but build on the foundations that we have set up for MPs 2025.
I mean, I'm looking forward to that future where I can, get a taxi and just scan the QR code, go to Kapana even. I don't need to take any cash with me. But just to be clear and so that people understand, what happens if you don't have a smartphone? Can you still make use of this functionality?
Absolutely. There is a USSD string code like the *130, *112, whatever it is. It might be, not to say that is the code as an example, but there will be a code that you can use.
So as long as you have a phone.
As long as you have a phone, it can be a feature phone, it can be a smartphone. And that's the world that we are looking into, deepening digital payments. We have created all of these foundations. We've set the rails. We've invested in infrastructure. Now we must sweat the assets, as the executives would call it.
I love that. Irene, thank you so much. I would love to keep you here for another 30 minutes, but I know you're very busy. So thank you so much for making time to join us on the BONCAST today to really unpack what the payment system is all about and what Bank of Namibia is driving with our partners. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nafiki. Thank you for having me.
As you've heard today, the National Payment Strategy Vision 2030 is more than just a strategy. It's a commitment to building a system that works for every Namibian, quietly powering opportunity behind the scenes. We once again wish to thank Ms. Irene Venter for joining us and for unpacking what this strategy is all about and what it will mean for you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for being part of this important conversation. I'm Nafiko Hamnime, and I'll see you in the next BONCAST.